Welcome back to Collective Perspective. We are going on to the big number 20 now, Craig. 20 whole,
Ooh,
that's 10
look at
months
that.
worth of Collective Perspective.
I know, because we only missed 1 month. Don't let anyone tell you that though. We almost did every month.
Let's talk about some video game adjacent stuff today. This was an idea submitted to us by my man Zylotic83, once again, also known as Vinny. Um,
Vinny.
let's talk about it. What kind of stuff do you collect that is not an actual video game that is related to video games, Craig?
Yeah, I do a little bit of figure collecting here and there. The biggest thing for me is I'm very into video game plushies and plushes and stuff. A very much the vintage ones especially. I don't have a lot because they're very hard to find and very expensive. A lot of them only come out in Japan and stuff. But I'm super into video game plushes. And before I go crazy and rant about those for a while, I'll let you talk about what you want to talk about too. Because I have a feeling I'll go on and on about them because I'm very fascinated by plushes.
So me personally, I collect a lot of Rayman stuff, and I feel like I say that a lot on this podcast, but the that's my main thing. You know, I want everything Rayman, and so I have made it a point to get Rayman toys. I have a freaking Slinky on my shelf in my closet. I have McDonald's toys galore. There's so much stuff, and that's just because I want everything Rayman. Um, but aside from that, there is pins. There are like statues you could be collecting. There's comic books related to video games. You know, Sonic has tons and tons of comics if you're into Sonic. Sonic's a great example. I should have looked up like that guy treasure hunting Sonic, you know, and just like scrolled
hmm
through to see all the crap you can buy in this world. Um,
Yes, because he stays up with the recent stuff too.
yeah,
He's one of the few people, as far as I'm aware, that's documenting all of it. Like he'll just post on his his Instagram story like, "Here's this thing you could find at this store right now,"
yeah.
and you don't see. I personally don't see or know anyone else that does that for any other series of just collectibles. So it's kind of cool that he's like the one keeping track of it all because there's so much, especially with Sonic, to keep up with. So there's an insane amount of Sonic stuff.
Absolutely. Books, not just comic books, but books as well. I used to collect Funko Pops myself. I'm not into it anymore, but um, I sold off most of mine. But yeah, if you're into video games, then Pops are there for you. They are
hmm
something that take up a lot of space, and I would probably suggest not getting into them, but do whatever you want, right? um,
Yeah, follow your dreams.
and then freaking stamps are a thing, right? So I have a Rayman 3 stamp that actually came with
Wow,
a Prince of Persia stamp because both of them are Ubisoft, I guess,
how
but
funny.
definitely only from France. But like, yeah, like there's all kinds of stuff. If you're into collecting, like, you know, people were buying Mario cereal and hoarding it for a while, you know. Don't hoard
Yes.
food on your shelves though. That's not a thing.
Now, people that collect old candy and food, I'm judging you a little bit because that's just a little nasty. After a while, it just has to go.
Let's talk about plushies, though. I want to hear about your love for these cotton collectibles.
Yes. So I've always had a thing for them. Even when I was a kid, I had a giant corner of plushes, whether it be video game or not. But when I was a kid, some of my most prized possessions, some of my most roughed around and play with toys were my Sonic the Hedgehog plushies. Because my parents were very cool about, like, they've always been very supportive about the things that I like, whether it be when I was, 7-year old or 27-year old like I am now. They just always they always did their best to care and show interest in what I like, which I think is nice because I feel like most parents are like, oh yeah, video games, whatever. And I think it helps that my dad's been an avid gamer since the Atari days, so like he gets it. And then my mom's like, yeah, this makes him happy. So when I was younger, they would actually when Sonic Adventure came out on the Dreamcast, I was obsessed. My favorite game as a kid, I played it over and over nonstop. They would import Japanese Sonic the Hedgehog plushies for me,
No
so I had
way.
all of the. I had a majority of the Sonic Adventure plushes. I had Big the Cat, Knuckles, Sonic, Chow, and Tails, which was the first wave. They didn't ever get me the second wave, which is like, I'm not faulting them, of course. I think it's awesome that I had those. And all the second wave ones are also way more expensive and way more rare anyway, so it's like they probably just couldn't find them because it was like Amy, Eggman, E102 Gamma, and all these crazy things like that. So I had like really cool and what would now be considered really collectible and vintage Sonic plushes that were just like my day-to-day toys. I love those things to death. And getting rid of them when I was a little bit older has always been one of my biggest regrets, because now you can find them. They're very expensive, but just enough out of my price range where I feel like I don't want to spend the money on them. But that's always kind of been something I've been interested in, because it's like, when you get older, you look up toys you used to have or things like that just because you're like, I wonder if that's worth anything now if I would have held on to them.
Yeah.
Usually the answer is yes, and then you are beating yourself over the head for getting rid of it. And a few years ago, someone that really reignited my passion for what I didn't really know was a passion for video game plushes was a YouTuber named Pat Mac. Have you heard of him?
Say it again?
Pat Mac?
No.
Yeah, so Pat Mac, he's not really active anymore, but for a long time he was very popular for doing look-back series on plush sets. So he would go and do research and find photos and talk about the history of different plush sets for, like, say, like, the Mega Man 2 plush set from the 80s. And he would find photos of them, like, sold listings, current listings, like, kind of try to evaluate how rare they are, how expensive they could be, what you could potentially pay to get them, your chances of actually finding them, websites to try to find them, and cool things like that. And when I found his videos, he did a video on the Sonic Adventure plushes, and I was like, oh my god, I was like, I had all these, it's so cool, I wish I still had them, wish I could have gotten the second wave too, because these are so cool. And I binged like all of his videos in the course of a week, and I was just like obsessed, and like then I got super into looking up plushes and finding vintage ones, and then doing my own research on ones that either he didn't cover or other people I hadn't seen cover, which, I mean, if he doesn't cover it, pretty much no one does, because he's like the only YouTuber to ever do something like that, which I think is a really cool and like very niche but specific and interesting idea, because, someone has to, everything has a history to it, and it should be preserved in some way, whether it's talked about, pictures shown, discussions of the product and all that. And he was the only one really doing it, so I started looking around trying to find plushes that I wanted, and just, buying more and more. And now I have nowhere to put them, because you talk about Funko Pops taking up way too much space. Plushes are usually way bigger. There's no size consistency, so they could either be, from each side of my screen that I'm in right now to the size of one of the pieces of my glasses. There's really no specific range. But there's just so many cool things out there, and the reason that I love plushes so much, and I always tell people, because people have asked, like, would you sell a bunch of your games to do that instead? And I'm like, totally. Honestly, if I could find, like, a good source to get a bunch of video game plushies, I would sell half my collection and focus on that instead, because I think they're so interesting. And the reason I like it is because that they're always imperfect. No plush is like one-to-one. None of it ever... They never look perfect to what they're going to be unless it's something simple like Kirby or something, right? But when you have like E102 Gamma from Sonic Adventure, how do you make that into a functional plush without making some creative liberties or doing something different or using weird materials to make different textures on it to make it look like an in-game model? It's never going to be perfect, and that's always what makes it look cool, because there's always something off, but it's usually not in a bad way. It's usually like cool creative liberties that makes them more interesting to either display or pose around, whatever you want to do with your plushies. I mean, I don't play with them. I'm not a player. No judging if you do play with your toys, Rain, and you're my age. Everyone has their thing. I'm not going to judge you. I just like looking at cool things, so it's like I just like to sit them on something, whatever they're going to do for the rest of the life while they exist in my home, getting dust on them and all that. I don't know, I like the imperfections. I think it's fun to see the way that the artist that designs the plushies finds workarounds to making it look either more practical or more like its game counterpart, and I find that so interesting. And a lot of stuff is usually very low produced, or if it's vintage, very hard to find because they're usually just in claw machines. So,
I love that.
Yes, so a lot of it would either be in, you get the Sonic Adventure plush set that I've been talking about, for example. Of course, there's going to be a ton of Sonic and Knuckles and Tails, right? Because those are the main three. There's not going to be a lot of Amy's. There's maybe going to be a few more Eggmans because he's the bad guy. A kid's going to want to have the bad guy to play with the good guys. Then you have the Chows, which was like a side thing within the game, so a lot of people did not care about it as much as they do now. And then you think about a side character like E102 Gamma, which has 3 recorded sales now, all above $4,000 because of how hard it is to find.
Wow.
So it's really interesting to see how impossibly hard some of these things are to come across. And then it's like, on top of all that, they just look really fucking cool, excuse my language, but one of the things with E102 Gamma as well is they used like a specific foam on his arms for the texture, and over the years, that foam just starts to degrade. So if you want to find one, like nowadays, that's in good condition and doesn't look all patched up and roughed up and destroyed, is almost impossible. There is a Twitter mutual of mine, I forget her name, otherwise I would say it, but she has the 102 Gamma, and she only ever picks it up with like special made gloves to make sure that nothing affects the plush. And it's like, it sounds silly, but it's like, you get one fleck out, like, you pick it up wrong once, and all those flakes are going to fall off, and the whole thing is ruined.
Yeah.
And there goes that $4,000 or $5,000 you spent on it.
Lord.
And I know, and you think about games being expensive, there's, most expensive plush that I've seen for sale, and another reason why I find all this so fascinating. Have you played Super Mario RPG?
A little bit, not much.
So, you probably know Mallow, though, right? The cloud-looking guy, Mallow,
Yeah,
however you want to say it. So, up until 2021, I believe, nobody was sure if a plush of him existed because, like, 10 years prior, there was one sold listing of one in a group of Mario plushes. So everybody assumed that it was, like, a custom plush because that was the only one that was ever seen. And people were like, well, then it's probably not real as a custom. Cut to 2020, and somebody finds an old Japanese magazine that is specifically made to talk about claw machine plushes, and there's set photos for all the different sets, and then you find one for Mario RPG, and lo and behold, it's the same Mallow in that listing from like 10 years ago.
Wow.
On whatever Chinese website is sold on, and everyone's like, holy cow, it's real. So now everyone that has all the Mario plushes except for Mallow is going crazy because that's the one that they're missing, and they thought they had the whole set for years. And they're like, well, now we need it. What the hell? And then one goes up on Bai last year and sells for $16,000.
Oh my goodness.
$16,000. And that person that bought it had that money, he had $20,000 set aside on purpose just for that plush because he knew one day it would go up for sale. When he found out it was real, he put all that money to the side. He's like, no matter what happens, when it goes up for sale, I'm winning it. And he just bid the max amount he could and just waited until it was over. He's like, no one is getting this but me. And mad respect to that person. But if you want to see some crazy, interesting, super undocumented, like I'm talking, I've found stuff that no one else has ever found about, and like I've written like a video script about it and stuff, and because no one else has ever talked about it. And one day I'll make this video because I still have the script. But it's like, if you want to talk about like interesting, undocumented, rare stuff, look into video game plushes. It is super fascinating how scarce some of this stuff is and how insane people get over it. I think it is so fun and so interesting. And there's so many, sorry, I'm talking so much I'm not even letting you talk, but like there's so many rare plushes and like plushes for things you wouldn't even think about. Like there's these really hard to find Tomba plushes. There's a plush of Klonoa from Klonoa 1. There are plushes of the children from Nice into Dreams. Like really, really obscure, weird stuff that you wouldn't even think about. So it's like when you come across it, it's super cool because no one talks about it. It makes for a great collection piece, and it's super, super rare to find some of this stuff. So plushes is like one of the most interesting like subsets of like video game related collecting things that is even out there.
You know, I feel like video games, comic books, they weren't meant to be collected, but they could be stored, and they were obviously stored for a long time. But things like plushies were never meant to be put on a shelf. I feel like they were meant to be
played with by a kid.
They were meant to be like thrown in the child's bed with them for them to sleep with or whatever. And
exactly.
Yeah, so it makes sense that they are way more scarce. That's super interesting. And you know, thinking about the claw machine aspect of it, if that's like where it like you could exclusively get something, that's super super cool. Um,
Yeah. So like there was a lot of old like websites back in the day where it's like they would have like sources to people that would live in Japan that would win the machines, sell it to them, and then they would distribute that to Americans for people that wanted it because that was the only way you can get it, especially like back in the 2000s. So it's super interesting, and it's like there's stuff you wouldn't, like I said, you wouldn't believe exists. Some of the stuff is so hard and weird and rare to find. It's the most underlooked aspect of like video game related collecting stuff. It's so cool.
don't you have monkey ball ones?
Yeah, so I do have one of II that's pretty hard to find. Not sure about the price. I don't know if they ever made plushes for the other characters. I've never seen any. I've seen two different IIs, one with a banana, and it looks a little bit more cheaply made, and then one that's much nicer, kind of like premium made. Like the ears are like game perfect and everything, and it's stuffed super well, and it's a Monkey Ball 2 one that I got. I also have like a couple Mr. Saturns. I have a Mr. Belch from Earthbound, which is one of the most famous bosses from that game. So that's a fun little obscure one that I have. Um, I have one of Young Link from Ocarina of Time, and he has like his Deku shield and Deku sword and stuff, which is really cool. So there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of weird little stuff you don't even know exists. Like there's a whole Ocarina of Time set. There was a canceled Majora's Mask set where it's like a couple of like prototypes have gone into the wild, so people own prototypes for a Majora's Mask set that never released and stuff like that. Really cool.
I feel like when it comes to plushes, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but people don't care if it's North American, like if it's region locked. Is that?
The only time I've noticed people care is with Sonic plushes, and more specifically with the Adventure plushes, because there was American versions of the Adventure plushes, and they didn't come with tags. And a lot of plush collectors really care about having their plushes tagged. So they prefer the Japanese ones since they have the actual tag on them. Because there's a lot of plushes that, even if they're really rare and expensive, if the tag is missing, that devalues it quite a lot. Because it's kind of like having a complete in box or a loose game. Like the tag is kind of like, if it's supposed to have one, that's what completes it.
I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
As silly as it sounds, I can see that.
I mean, it is silly, but so is us making sure our Harry Potter with movie ticket variant has the movie ticket in it, Just as silly, just a different sector of silly.
This is a very good analogy. I feel like you're always killing it with the analogies.
I do my best. And I don't know. I love plushes. I'm super passionate about them. They're just a lot of the stuff I want is very hard to find, has to come like imported from Japan, or I can't even find it at all. A lot of these rare plushes have 0 listings most days you'll look for them, or most weeks or months that you'll look for them. Like I said, there's only been like 4 recorded sales of the E102 Gamma plush for the original Sonic Adventure set. So, and on top of that, they take up so much space. So I'm really passionate about it. I'm just like kind of distantly passionate about it.
How many would you say you own?
Probably at least 150.
Oh my gosh,
So
I had no idea.
I have quite a lot. No, yeah, I don't have them on display anywhere. They're just kind of like shoved in a closet, and then the ones that are either more valuable or have like kind of like texture that I know can get damaged, I have them like separated to make sure that they stay good. But I do have actually quite a lot of them. I've just never really shown them off. I think that would make for a good YouTube video one day, is displaying them all or talking about them. I think that'd make for a fun one.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people don't know how into it I actually am. I can't find the right way to display it, like games are easy, you get a DVD shelf, but it's like you could get like a bookshelf to put the plushes in, but then you have to squish them all together, and like I said, all the sizes are inconsistent, and then it's like if you get a basket to put them in, then they're going to be on top of each other and you can't see them all anyway. It's just a very difficult thing to display.
Yeah, I see that for sure.
But they are super, super cool. Just to mention probably my favorite plush I own, I have no idea how rare it is because I have not been able to find another one. But as a lot of people who may follow me on Instagram know, I'm a big Atlas Jack Frost fan. He's been my profile picture on like Discord and Instagram and stuff like since I've started doing that kind of stuff, showing off my collection and all that. And there's another version of Jack Frost called Black Frost, where he's instead of being white skin and blue hat, he's black skin and purple hat and has red eyes. And I randomly came across an eBay listing out of the blue one day when I was just looking up like Jack Frost plush just to see what there was. It was $100, so I bought it, and then I have not seen another one since in the 4 years that I've owned it. Like anywhere, and I've tried looking for like recorded sales. I've tried looking up on Google Images, and I have not seen anybody else with that plush except for one other person on Reddit that had it. So I'm very happy to own something exceptionally rare and something that means a lot to me personally because I'm a super big Atlas and Shin Megami Tensei fan.
Yeah, I'm thinking you need to make yourself a little YouTube series for this stuff. That sounds interesting, and I just want to see it now.
I know. Like, how many people even know that there is a Chaos plush of Chaos Zero for Sonic Adventure? Probably not that many, and I have one, so.
Certainly not me.
Exactly. I need to get, there's a really weird Rayman plush of him riding like a missile.
I was about to bring that up, yeah.
I want to get that one. That's as far as I know, that's the only Rayman plush. I've never seen other ones.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'm pretty sure it's probably a France exclusive because Rayman and Ubisoft, but definitely would love to own that.
That would be a cool one. Have you tried looking? Do you know, like, is it pretty expensive, pretty hard to find?
I have, like, a save search for, like, everything Rayman in the world, so I pretty much see things popping up, and I never, ever see that. But I know my guy, Brad, I forgot his Twitter handle, but fellow Rayman collector Brad is, he has one. He has everything Rayman, but he's,
fun.
Yeah, not many people have it for sure. Very cool thing.
Cool.
I have a Sonic plush from Dave & Buster's from about 1 year ago. Probably not collectible, but that's the one plush I got.
Thousands. Gonna be your retirement there.
Anything else? I think I'm gonna rename this episode to the plush episode.
There you go. Oh, I guess I actually do collect a lot of video game soundtracks on vinyl. I guess I would count that too. I'm very into video game OSTs, so.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, I probably listen to the Skyrim soundtrack on vinyl while listening to manga at least once a week.
There's a 3D World soundtrack. I think it came out on CD in Japan only. Mario 3D World, to be clear. Love that game. Definitely would love to own that.
That'd be fun. 3D World and 3D Land, I think, are both overhated. I think those are very good games. People are too hard on them.
You said they're underrated?
Overhated.
Oh.
I feel like people are really hard on them, and I never really understood why.
Probably my favorite video game ever made is 3D World. Not even exaggerating.
Really? Wow. How's a Rayman game not your favorite game?
Yeah, my friends listen to this podcast to help me. They support me and stuff. And
yeah.
Anytime I talk about a favorite game or something, they're like, "What? You mean it's not a Rayman game?" And I'm like, "Well, I mean, he's cool, but."
He's like, but he ain't no Mario, buddy. Can't top my boy.
Right.
Oh, and if it exists, Gravity Rush. Anything Gravity Rush I collect as well. There's just not a lot of Gravity Rush stuff out there.
Right.
So kind of like how you are with Rayman.
Cool. I think that'll wrap it up. Yeah, thank you guys for listening. Come join the Discord, talk to us about plushes, and
show us your video game plushes if you have them. I would love to see them, especially if it's like weird, random stuff that most people wouldn't assume exist. Like, show me Fake Crash. I know there's a Fake Crash plush out there.
There you go. Drop a comment, join the Discord. It's completely free, and we'll see you guys in November for 2 more episodes.
Yeah, take care, y'all.